a high school class project, my teacher told me it's unrealistic being a CEO. It's been my dream to be a CEO since I was 10. So I told her, it is realistic. Follow me on my journey to learn what it takes to become a CEO. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Realistic CEO podcast. Today I'm here with Paul Lambert. How you doing today, Paul?
I'm great, thanks. Nice to have you here.
I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to allow me to interview you. So thank you for that.
No, thank you for including me in this. It's really nice to be here.
My pleasure. So for the first question I want to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I'm unexpectedly in my life and the president and CEO of the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, which is a beautiful full orchestra that has existed in Springfield, Massachusetts, entering our 82nd season. And we put on concerts. I'm in charge of the business side of that orchestra, obviously helping pull together all the details, the concerts, the financing, anything that comes together on the business perspective, but also trying to do a lot of work in the community to keep the symphony orchestra alive and thriving during pretty challenging times for that industry.
Is this always your industry that you wanted to be in?
No, not even a little bit. As I mentioned, it's really unexpected I'm here. I did, when I was a young man, I began my professional career in the professional theater. Performing arts were always very important to me. And I actually, after some very lean years, did make a living primarily after performing primarily on the business side of life. And again, somewhat unexpectedly, after I met and married my wife, and a year later we had a son, one of us, she was an actress. One of us had to get a real job. And I happened to stumble into an opportunity working in professional basketball. So I worked for the NBA for well over a decade and then ended up here in Springfield working for the Basketball Hall of Fame for over 20 years, putting on all their events, their programming, their enshrinements, everything like that. And had no intention, certainly, or any thoughts about running a symphony orchestra. I loved it. I've always gone to concerts. I love music. I grew up in a family with a lot of classical music and different kinds of music around. My dad loved jazz. There's all kinds of music in the house. And I took after we moved to Springfield, I was always a subscriber to the Springfield Symphony Orchestra. Took my late mom to the symphony for over 17 years because she loved going to the concerts. So I'm very familiar with it, certainly, and I love it. But it was not anything I thought about doing. It was just an unexpected opportunity that came along really out of the blue. The pandemic had happened, which I thought I would slow down. My wife was very eager for me to slow down at that point because I've been working like a crazy person for over 30 years. And I thought I would ease into a quieter time. And she kept leaning toward me with what we jokingly call the R word. And I said, I don't think I'm ready to retire. It's not that. I think there's another adventure here, but I'll try to slow down. I failed. I bumped into some people who were connected to this symphony. And the SSO had been going through a very rough time. The pandemic, everything had shut down. There were no concerts. There had been a significant labor dispute. There had been all kinds of challenges the organization had gone through. And I literally just talking to one of the gentlemen who was connected to the PR efforts connected to the symphony, said, hang in there and please stay alive. This is really important for our city and for our community. And a couple of hours later, a gentleman from the board called me and said, we've heard about you. Can you help us? Here I am. I just came in. I didn't intend to do it. And frankly, going back and forth with them for quite some time, what was really important to me was the understanding that I was coming in, and I chose the words carefully, in good faith to try to help. And that's how I approached this ever since day one, really.
And so talk about you wanted to take a more lesser role and ease your way out into now doing what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Where did you see yourself finishing off before now?
I didn't know. I felt like there was something more I could do. I've always done a lot of work in the community. I've always been involved with a lot of boards, a lot of outreach. I was lucky enough for a long time to have the game of basketball as that hook that I could walk in and talk to so many people, all kinds of backgrounds all around the world. I was lucky enough to do a lot of international events for the NBA, and I worked in Japan and Australia and all over Europe, Canada, and the United States, doing NBA All-Star games, all kinds of things. And again, it was so easy to walk in and talk to almost anyone then because I could talk about basketball. And being such a popular game in the world, it gave me just a hook to start conversations about what we could do together. I've tried to use some of that same thought process, that same kind of energy around music, which again is one of those universal, beautiful things that covers all kinds of cultures and backgrounds and really has allowed us to, I hope, to reach across borders of age and race and any kind of economic backgrounds, whatever. Everyone loves music in some way. And there's so many wonderful traditions of music. I'm hoping we can do that same kind of work here to engage the beautifully diverse community we live in here in Springfield.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, like, when you first started, you talked about theater to the NBA.
Yeah.
How was that transition like?
It was really challenging. I have never been, certainly as a young man in particular, I was never the most corporate person in the world. I had been working in the theater and had somewhat accidentally ended up on the business side, running America's oldest summer theater, the Cape Playhouse in Dennis, Massachusetts. I'd gone up there for a summer as a stage manager for one season, and they asked me to stay and take over the business side, which again was really unexpected. I was in my 20s. I had no business background particularly. I loved it. I loved the place. I loved the people. I loved the work we did. And I remember thinking, me? Sure, you got the right guy here. And they said, we think you can do this. So I stayed, and I was there for 7 years. And that's where I met my wife. She came through with a show. The lovely Cynthia was the talent of the family. And after our son Ben was born, as I say, one of us had to get a real job with benefits, was really the key. And I had gone in for a week's worth of work. A friend of a friend had gotten a corporate job at the NBA and needed help setting up his office. I went in for a week to help him. I said, I could do that. And talking with those folks about what they were doing as an organization, growing the league around the world, using music and entertainment and events and different things, and reaching out to VIPs in many fields, was a lot of what I was doing in the theater in terms of dealing with ticketing and dealing with performance and dealing with the staging of events. In my case, I'd been doing plays or musicals or whatever. And I also did a lot of stage managing of these giant corporate industrial shows for companies who would spend $2-3 million on one day to introduce a new car or whatever. So I was used to dealing with kind of high pressure situation. But the NBA was a totally different animal for me. I love basketball. Happily, I did love basketball. And I was thrilled to be there. And it was still that sense of unreal that, really? And they were very nice to me, and they kept bringing me back and to do different things, to run different parts of the all-star games that they were doing and big events the league was doing. And by then I had moved. I wasn't sure I wanted to work in a corporate environment because it really was not who I felt I was. And at that point I was up in Agunquit, Maine, running the Agunquit Playhouse with John Lane, the producer up there. And a very nice lady from the NBA called me and she said, look, we're growing we have this new special events department. You'll be our 5th person joining this group. We need someone to run our hotel business around the world for all the events we do. She said, I know this is not your dream job, but it's a good job. It's got great benefits. Don't be a jerk. Take the job. So I did. And it started a wonderful adventure for me. So I've often talked with people about the fact that my path went this way. No one could have followed the exact path I took because who would do that? And it's unique to me. But it's just one of those times of being open to what life possibilities might be. And in my case, I was blessed to have such remarkable people around me and other opportunities come along. Happily, I was able to step through the door when those opportunities came along.
What exactly was your role when you worked with the NBA? Because that's a very cool experience. I worked with the NBA. Yeah. I was able to make an impact.
I did a variety of jobs for the NBA. First, I was lucky enough to have landed there slightly before when the Dream Team happened in the early 90s. And when that team came alive, the game exploded around the world. And literally, I say there was this tiny little special events group that they'd put together. And I remember my boss's boss, Steve Mills, came in. He said, we need someone to go to Japan. Who wants to go to Japan and put together an event? And everyone else in the room was kind of like, and I said, I'll go. It sounded cool to me. And so I went, I loved it. So I started doing a lot of international events. They found they could send me almost anywhere. I was thrilled to meet people from different cultures and work in different ways. And we had our standards and we had events we put on. I put on a series of regular season games in Japan, which was a huge undertaking take 2 teams to Japan and put on games that mattered was a huge responsibility. I worked on all kinds of all-star games. I worked on all kinds of different events around the world, putting things together. From that first job running the hotel business, happily, the league was really starting to do remarkable work combining sports and entertainment in a variety of ways. If you went to NBA games in those days, suddenly there were dancing girls and flying monkeys and hip-hop music everywhere and all kinds of entertainment going on. And my background allowed me to be able to work with the event people who were very buttoned up and detailed, and work with the entertainment people who were much more creative. And let's try this. What do you think about this? I could speak both languages. So I kind of landed in the middle of that. And that was really my primary role for many years, running the performance courts, as it were. And I loved it. And of course, I was lucky enough to be around some great games and some great athletes and all like that. Part of my job at the NBA, after a couple of years, though, also coming up to Springfield, Massachusetts every year, because the Hall of Fame, which was at that point the old Hall of Fame, they had one event that they had to put on every year, their enshrinement event, when people were put into the Hall of Fame. And they didn't really have event people. I saw a couple of us from the NBA would come up every year to put on the enshrinement event for them. I'd grown up near Boston, so I was always happy to come back to Massachusetts and to be part of that. And it was in the old Civic Center, and we would come up, 3 of us, and we'd stage this event. And it was a very much more low-key event than what we grew it into eventually. And we would actually tape the show. There was a dinner in the middle of it that Shea Joseph would come in and stage this big thing. And we would tape this show over hours. And then we would race back to Secaucus, New Jersey, and cut the show all night and put it on a tape delay the next day, which shows you how the world has changed into a 1-hour special. But that's what introduced me to the Hall of Fame and how I started to come up here. And in 2001, I came up for that. By that time, we were starting to stage the event more fully. And now by then, I don't think it was the Mass Mutual Center yet. I think it was still the Civic Center. But I came up and met John DeLeva, who was the newly hired president and CEO of the Hall of Fame. And through a variety of circumstances, I got involved helping out his staff on a series of challenges they had over that event. And John and I went out to have a beer afterwards and talk. And we talked a lot about this new giant dome Hall of Fame they were building and how they could not replicate what had happened in the old hall. It was time for a change. We talked a lot about programming. We talked a lot about events. We talked a lot about the things I knew had worked at the NBA to really grow our brand in a variety of ways. David Stern, the commissioner, was really a genius in many regards. I use that word carefully. But one of the things David clearly understood was how to leverage events around the world. We would put on the best events, I think, that sports could ever do all over the world. And while it might be an expense to stage that event, all the other business units of the league benefited. Our sponsorship sales would go up, our television rights, everything would like that if we did our events right, and entertained all the VIPs and corporate people and fans and everybody who was involved in loving the game. So John and I talked about that a lot, and that was our conversation. And I went back to my family and back to work at the NBA. And a couple of weeks later, John called me and he said, I've been thinking about our conversation a lot. I think you're right. We need to do something different. We can't just open the doors and hope people come in. How about you? You want to come up here and do that? So after much thought and much deliberation, and we drove up here and looked around, and I knew it would be nice to live in Western Massachusetts. And I was excited about the possibilities of helping revive the Hall of Fame and this brand new opportunity. And I took the job. That's what landed me here in Springfield. And my first real startup was the grand opening of that building and Magic Johnson's enshrinement weekend. So no pressure, just easygoing time. Yeah.
So what was that like? That being your first actual weekend working here?
Yeah, it was a stressful time. There was a ton of things to do. We were building up from the ground up. The building was madly being finished at the end. Literally, they were sweeping out the back as we were coming in the front. And the building was brand new, and I hadn't been there, of course, for the construction side of the whole thing. So I kept asking questions about, can we do this? And how do we do this? And what do we lean into? And at first, I think I was not bugging the guys who were madly trying to finish the job. It was like, you'll figure it out. I kept, let's do great stuff. And we tried to stage something to bring a lot of positive attention to the Hall of Fame. The previous years, there'd been a couple of older gentlemen, the Hall of Famers, who had come to enshrinement. I remember 5 or 6 older gentlemen would be there. And I thought to myself, that's not right. We have to do something to really attract the basketball community. We want all these Hall of Famers to come back and think of Springfield, Massachusetts as their home. And this institution is their place, honoring them forever, not just a weekend that they go in. And we also had to do a lot of work to really establish the Hall of Fame as a living partner and a living presence in the basketball community. This game that I loved so much and was growing all around the world. So that was a real challenge, and just convincing people and finding the money and budgets to say, let's bring people in and let's put them up and let's treat them in a first-class manner and let them know that they are the museum. The museum is brick and mortar, and that's wonderful, but they are the living history of the game, and to find ways to celebrate all of them, their remarkable careers. And as I had discovered in my time at the NBA, and even more so at the Hall, remarkable people with amazing stories to have achieved what they did. So we were lucky enough to work on that. And again, using my contacts at the NBA, using the new friends I was making at the NCAA, because we're the whole game. The Hall of Fame was the whole game of basketball, not just the NBA, which separates that Hall of Fame from all the other halls that I'm aware of. We were able to convince a lot of Hall of Famers to come back for the grand opening, and then to let them know this is how we wanted to do it from now on. We want this to become an annual celebration, like a homecoming, a family reunion. And all the programming we did that weekend, I loved. When I was a little boy and my grandmother would tell me stories, I like listening to old folks tell stories. So I kept right away putting some of the older gentlemen on stage and talking to them about what the game was like when they were young and how did they come to be who they were. And what have you lived through? And now look where we are in this beautiful new. And I thought that was really important, to honor them and to show them respect. And that seemed to work. So we always try to do different kinds of programming featuring some of the returning members of the Hall of Fame and finding ways to really celebrate them. And I loved it. I loved doing that.
So it seems that you somehow always ended up in doing something that involved entertainment.
Yeah.
Was it because you just feel like you loved being able to entertain people, or did it just happen to fall into your hand?
No, I did. At the time I was a little boy, I happened to go to a great elementary school in Newton, Massachusetts, where we sang all the time. And we put on shows all the time. And I loved it. It just felt easy for me, and I loved it. And I never had stage fright or whatever. I just loved it. You talked about taking some speech classes. I always thought, that's good. It makes you comfortable getting up in front of people. But I loved it. I loved entertaining people and putting on shows, first as a performer, but then as on the business side. I came to really just think it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. But then as life went on, I came to think of it more and more as really important. First, just to give people a chance to come to a place and have a lovely evening, or to relax and enjoy yourselves. Now, in particular in this role, during this particular time that we're living through, which is such a challenging time in so many ways, politically, economically, culturally, there's just so much stress and anxiety going on in the world. I really come to think of it as a really important work that we're doing. Music, in particular, the concerts we do, I look at as a healing time to bring our community together with different forms of music, different traditions of music, different frameworks, but come together as a group, let it all go for a couple of hours. It's the last thing I always say to folks before the concert starts. For a couple of hours, turn off your cell phone. Not just as a courtesy to the people around you, but for yourself. Let it go for a couple of hours and let yourself heal in beautiful music. So I really come to think of it as really important in that regard. And I love the fact that our concerts here, and certainly at the NBA, bring together all kinds of people from different backgrounds to just have a wonderful time together as a community. Even for that unique experience of being together that one time, it's something special. I came to think of it a lot of times I think about people who make great bottles of wine when they work for a long time to grow the grapes and to design the label and to make everything perfect. And then you get it and you sit down with your wife or whatever, and you open that bottle and you drink it, and it's good and it's beautiful and it's part of a lovely night, and then it's gone. And I think of sometimes our entertainment that way. is special. It's unique to that night. At the NBA, of course, everything was recorded and you could watch it for a long time after, which is cool. And how you capture that is wonderful. But the actual experience, being in the room, being there where the magic happens, live in the theater, live in the hall, live in the arena, or whatever, it's pretty special. And it's something you carry with you, I think, in your heart and your soul.
So what are the similarities and differences between trying to do an event in the NBA at a halftime show versus what you're doing now and trying to get people into the orchestra?
Sure. No, it's different. It's different in many ways, the same in some ways. Different in that basketball boomed. And I was lucky enough to be there as it did that. And I could be in Melbourne, Australia, and talking to people, and I might say, so Charles would, I didn't have to stop and say, Charles Barkley, he's a basketball player everyone knew Charles. I just say Charles, everyone knew. And that's special. So the game was just taking off. It had become a pop cultural institution. It was just wonderful to watch it happen. And the combination, as I mentioned, between pop culture and music and basketball was really visceral, and you could feel that excitement, how it worked all over the world. Here, the challenge is more so about the time and place. It's a really challenging time for this industry. Our primary music, which is what most people would have called classical music that the orchestra plays, is going through a real challenging time. The demographics of folks who have historically gone to those concerts were my mom and dad. A lot of folks who are aging, folks who are that natural audience for that particular kind of music might be fading a bit. And of course, the economic challenges of working in a city like Springfield in this region are real. To find people, it's an expensive art form, and to find ways to make it all work and pay for it is a big challenge. At the same time, to attract, we need to get younger audiences in. We need to get more diverse audiences in. So landing here by accident, we really leaned into that. Where at the NBA, you could just open the doors and say, come on in, and people would be excited to be there. Here we have to give people more of a reason to come in. And part of that is convincing folks, initially verbally, and we hope for some more marketing, but then through the actions we take and the concerts we put together to let folks know that we mean it. We want everyone to feel this orchestra represents them and represents their wonderfully diverse community that we are here in Western Massachusetts. So we've tried very intentionally to put together seasons and different concerts that reflect different musical traditions, different formats, different folks representing all kinds of really rich, beautiful music, but different kinds of music that maybe you'd think, I don't know if I want to go for that, but that's of interest. Maybe I'll check that one out. We found once we get you in the door, you'll come back because the music is beautiful. And it's really cool to hear a symphony orchestra on stage, 65, 70 musicians playing together it's a beautiful old hall that we have here in downtown Springfield. The acoustics are great. It's really exciting, and it's very moving, I find, to hear that music. So once we get you in the door, we tend to do pretty well. The key is to get you in the door and hopefully keep finding enough ways to pay for it and make it all work, because it's an expensive art form during a time of real economic stress, and not just corporately, but personally. We know that people have a lot of decisions to make about every dollar they spend. We hope they'll spend some of it to come to us and see some of our concerts. We never want money to be an issue. We have a kind of a standard rule. No one's going to be turned away from one of our concerts based on a ticket price. We've tried really hard to keep our tickets affordable. We've tried really hard to find ways to make sure that people really understand we want you to come, and it's the concerts we put together are not an accident. Through the weird circumstances of life, when I got here, everything had shut down. There was no staff. There was nothing, really, because between everything that had gone on, everything had really stopped. So the challenge of rebuilding on the fly was a big challenge, to start to put together a staff, to start to put together concerts with no one here. There was no music director. The gentleman who'd been the conductor, the maestro here for 20 years, had left the organization. We tried to use that as an opportunity. It's allowed me to bring in different conductors and different maestros who represented a broad spectrum of people. We've had women conductors for the first time. We've had younger conductors. We've had conductors of color. We've had all kinds of people come in to conduct these concerts, which we again hope is a very overt and intentional method of saying there are all kinds of folks. We want you to come in and feel part of this. So that's really, it's when it works, it fills your heart. It's great. And it's really exciting to watch when our community does come together. We're the last of our kind. We're the last major music arts performing group in downtown Springfield. So we think it's really a great gift that we're here. And so we fight every day to make sure that we can stay.
So you talked about how you're trying to reach a younger audience.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that you have been taking that approach?
A variety of ways. First, by the choices of the music we choose, the concerts we choose, trying to combine some popular forms of music and also finding new formats. One thing we did 2 years ago now, 2 seasons ago, we had our first movie night. We had Bugs Bunny at the Symphony, and it was a whole series of Warner Brothers cartoons, which, if you think back, featured all kinds of music, classical music in particular. And it was a great show, and that brought in thousands of folks who had clearly never come to one of our concerts before, and they had a ball. It was great. We've tried different concerts. We have our third annual Juneteenth concert, which we, again, coming out of that first season, the fact that we survived it was a miracle.
Mm.
And we tried to think of a way to say thank you to the community for sticking with us and supporting us. And this new national holiday was sitting there right at the end of our season. And I thought, that really represents a lot of what we're talking about here, rebirth and hope and a positive future. So let's lean into that. So we did a Juneteenth concert. It was a free concert to the city. And we wanted people to come just for our ability to say thanks and to feature, again, new kinds of music. There was gospel, there was jazz, there was classical music, symphonic music, all kinds of music featured in that concert. And we had literally hundreds of people who came who told us they'd never been to one of our concerts before. And was really exciting, hundreds of people who told us they'd never even been in Symphony Hall before. So we lean in on that. We also do a tremendous amount of work now. We have a vibrant youth orchestra program, youth education program. We're doing all kinds of work. We reestablished, I heard from a lot of folks back in the day that the first time I ever heard a symphony orchestra was they brought my school, my fourth grade, whatever. We're going to do that again. So we were lucky enough, support from the city was critically important to pull that off. And we're deeply grateful to the mayor and the folks who are working with us on that program. We reestablished our program, bringing in young people. I lean into fourth graders. I've been reading to fourth graders in the schools for years, so I happen to have a thing about fourth graders. But we had just recently 2,000 fourth graders came to a concert at Symphony Hall, and they had a ball, and they got to hear a full symphony orchestra play. And I hope they remember that for the rest of their life and come back many times. I know that was my current challenge, and this is what I'm focused on, is that was 2,000 fourth graders from Springfield. Now I need to find money to do a second version of that for all the other fourth graders from Agawam and from Westfield and from South Hadley and from Longmeadow and East, whatever. I bet they'd like to come too. And we're really lucky. We have, in part of this new staff we put together, of really dedicated, smart people who all share this passion for keeping this thing alive. Caitlin Meyer and her team and our educational platform, it's just booming right now. So we're, knock on wood, we're aiming for that.
So what has been, like, so you talked about how when you first got here, you said it was during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what was that like, trying to keep the orchestra, everything alive while in a time where nobody could even go out?
It was on life support. And truly, they had not done a concert in some time. As I mentioned, there was no staff. There was one lady in finance and one very brave young woman trying to keep our youth orchestra alive. They were still rehearsing through the pandemic. It was shrinking. Everything was gone. So it was really hard. It was really hard. And a lot of the first 6 months when I got here was really about trying to talk to the orchestra and talking to potential sponsors or donors or the community, trying to build a staff and convincing anybody to work with us and help us keep this thing alive and rebuild it. I kept quoting Desmond Tutu, wonderful late Desmond Tutu, about truth and reconciliation, to find out where things had gone wrong in the past, where things had broken up, where things had fallen apart, to own those challenges and admit them, own them. And now let's move on and reconcile and move on. And so We were every day trying to build trust with our community, build trust with our new staff, build trust with our musicians, build trust with the city, build trust with anyone who would talk to us, that we were doing this with all sincerity in our heart and trying, not desperately, is maybe not too strong a word, to make sure that this beautiful institution, this beautiful orchestra didn't die. In my youth, working in summer stock theater, I'd seen other theaters run into trouble, and the board or somebody would say, we're going to take a seat, we're going to take close for a year, but we'll be back. He never came back. Once it's gone, we couldn't let this thing be gone. The fact that Springfield, Massachusetts, which is a poor city and economically in many regards, challenged economically, the fact that we have a symphony orchestra is a remarkable gift. It's a miracle. Many much bigger, wealthier cities don't have a symphony orchestra. We do, going back to the 1940s. So again, we have to keep that gift alive. And that's the mission we carry with us every day when we come to work. Let's find a way to make this work. Let's find a way to keep this going. Let's find a way to take ourselves out to new audiences. Part of the challenge we now face also is to get ourselves out of Springfield once in a while, to take our concerts, some form of us, to different parts of the valley. We live in this beautiful place, and to find ways that all the various communities that make up our community understand that this orchestra and this institution represents them and is here for them.
What has been your favorite experience so far?
There have been so many. Oh my gosh. We did a concert 2 years ago aimed very intentionally at the Latino audience who had historically just not come to our concerts. It was a pop concert primarily with the Mambo Kings and all like that. And people were dancing in the aisle, literally. It was a lot of fun. That was wonderful. Concerts we've done bringing in Byron Stripling, this wonderful jazz musician who came in and played with us and did this combination of jazz. And it was such a beautiful concert. And working with him, first he came to a luncheon with me in the community to encourage people to come to the concert. And watching that community turn out was very moving to me to see that happen. It's a moment that'll stay with me forever. Because again, there have been no concerts for a while, and there had been labor issues and all kinds of trauma coming together. And we had these 2 concerts that were left over from an old contract that we were supposed to put on in the spring of 2021. And it was really, we had to put it together and figure out how to sell tickets and how to stage this, how to do anything. Renato Wendell, the orchestra manager who had been part of it, agreed to come back and help me. He's still, thank God, he's a gift from God, and to help me put it on. But it was really hard to figure it out. And Mark Russell Smith, who had been a conductor here many years, agreed to come back and conduct those 2 concerts and putting it together. How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to make this work? How are we going to do this? And we get the 2 dates together, and the first rehearsal is happening at Symphony Hall. All the orchestra members are coming in who haven't seen each other for some time now. And everyone's hugging and happy and jumping around, much hugging and kissing and merriment going on, which is great. And I welcomed everybody and thanked them all for being there. And I'm alone. I'm in Symphony Hall by myself at this point with our production manager and Greg Jones and Renato Wendell. And I jumped off the stage, and the conductor, and they all sat down, everything was, and he went like that. And they started to play Brahms. And this music came on the stage of these 65 musicians or whatever. And it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes because it was just so beautiful. And that's one of those moments that stay with me forever. So that was a special moment. But there have been so many. People coming up to me at intermission and saying, oh my God, we had such a great time. Or I was so depressed or anxious today and I'm so happy to be here. I love that. The 2,000 fourth graders going crazy was pretty wonderful. There's so many great moments.
I just have a couple more questions for you. So in my book, Realistic CEO, Tony, he talks about the LBW, the long, lonely, born word.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about the LBW in your career?
Oh, listen, I grew up as a baby stagehand, and I worked when I was 16 years old, I was working 110 hours a week in summer stock theater, building scenery all day and then running shows all night and loving it, of course, loving it, but working like crazy. And every job I've ever had, as my family points out to me on a regular basis, I work long hours. I work somewhat like a crazy person, I'm sure, but it's a passion that I carry. On this job, I've told the staff many times, you might get an email from me at 3:00 in the morning. Don't answer it. Don't think I'm expecting you to respond. It's just in my head, and I've got to get it out because then maybe I can roll over and go back to sleep a little bit. But the details of putting this together, blessedly now, I think we've reached a point of some modest stability with our staffing. We have a great team here right now that we're excited to bring together and work together. But the work on budgets, the work on putting the concerts together, the work on every aspect of what we've done here. Part of the challenge was coming from an organization that was primarily on paper to try to find ways to make ourselves more efficient using more modern technology, to find ways to communicate better. And at the same time, just finding ways to make ourselves able not just to survive, but to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been tons of grinding detail work. That's the nature of the show business, the business part of show business. At the NBA, it was certainly like that. Every event had to be perfect. We were the best at what we do, and we wouldn't accept any less standard. When you do events, when you do concerts, when you do programming, anything like that, we used to point out to each other in the event business, when I was running the hotel business for the NBA, that was for many of our guests coming in. Their first point of contact at an all-star weekend might be when they try to check into the hotel. It better be right. It better be perfect. And so we would check that, and we would double check that, and we would triple check that, and we would quadruple check that to make sure all the details were right. And then going over it with the hotels and going over it with ourselves to make sure that everything was a really first-class experience. And we've tried to lean into that. We want people to feel welcome at our concerts now. We lean into that. Our staff is wonderfully welcoming and excited to have every person who comes through the door come to one of our concerts. So it's all part of that grinding detail to make, we hope, a wonderful experience for everybody who comes. And that they shouldn't think about that work. They should just think about, in our case now, the beauty of the music they're going to get to hear.
I just have one more question for you. And it's, what's one fun fact about yourself?
A fun fact about me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure there are a whole lot of fun facts about me. What fun fact about me? Let's see. I have two beautiful sons. The lovely Cynthia and I were blessed to have two sons, Ben and Pete, who both work in basketball, actually, now. And so we will watch games together. They both work for the NBA. So we will watch many games together now through the magic of social media and all like that. We're texting during the game, fretting about our beloved Celtics in my case. Fun fact about myself, there's a lot of fun facts, but I guess the fun fact mostly is that I've had this remarkable, unexpected life in many regards. And I feel remarkably lucky to be doing any of this. And at the same time, hoping that the joy I feel in my heart to be part of this and part of this wonderful place we live comes through. And that other people can let go of some of the stress and some of the anxiety and some of the tension and some of the anger that I sense so many people are carrying with them every day now. And be kind, like you say in the story. Be kind to each other. It's so easy to be kind if you choose to go that way. Much easier than carrying the anger around. So let's just lean in that way for a little while. I think I know we need it. And I want Ben and Pete and all of you to have that world that's a better place. In some ways, we all hoped to make. I'm not sure we're getting there. I'm not sure we haven't dropped the ball in some cases, but I'm hoping we can still turn things around a bit and make it a better place.
I just want to thank you again for coming on. I really do appreciate that.
It's a joy to talk to you. Thanks so much for wanting to come in and talk and come back. If you have ideas about what we can do better, how we can reach more people, tell me. Our hearts and minds are open always. We know we don't know everything, and especially here, I'm learning every day. What do I know about running a symphony orchestra? We learn every day. Please, let's hear from you. We'd love to see you again.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And I want to thank every single one of you for all the support you have shown me in this past year of becoming the realistic CEO. Ways that you can support even more is by going onto my website, www.realisticceo.com and ordering your copy of the Realistic CEO book. The big mission that we have in the next 5 years is to be able to give away 500,000 copies of the Realistic CEO book. So when you order just one copy, just one, it helps us because that means we match and we're able to donate one copy. And also, if you want to give away more, we also have a donation section on the website where you can donate as much books as you want. That will be truly appreciated to me and the kids that will all receive the books as well. Thank you for tuning into this episode. See you in the next one. Peace.